Tonight, a seismic shift in North American security is sending shockwaves across the continent. For years, the stability of our northern border has been a quiet reassurance, a silent promise that the vast expanse between the United States and Canada was impenetrable. But now that sense of security has been shattered by an unprecedented announcement. In a rare and bold move, Canada has publicly declared that America's northern defenses are dangerously outdated and ill-prepared for the threats of the modern era. This isn't just a technical critique, it's a direct challenge to the very foundation of North American defense cooperation. For decades, the US trusted its border with Canada as an unbreakable shield, an invisible line that kept threats at bay. Generations have grown up believing that the world's longest undefended border was a symbol of trust and mutual protection. But today, that trust is being questioned in the harshest terms. Ottawa's new report, A Sovereign Shield, exposes critical gaps in Arctic surveillance, revealing that vast stretches of the northern frontier are virtually unmonitored. The report warns that millions of Americans, especially those in northern states, are now vulnerable to emerging threats, from advanced missile systems to cyber intrusions and even covert incursions across the ice. This isn't just a diplomatic spat. It's a public rebuke from our closest ally, signaling a loss of confidence in Washington's commitment to continental security. The tone from Ottawa is unmistakable. The era of quiet cooperation is over, replaced by open demands for urgent action. The report accuses the US of ignoring urgent threats at home while focusing on conflicts abroad. Billions are spent on distant wars, while the northern approaches, once considered safe, are left exposed. Critics argue that this neglect could have dire consequences if adversaries exploit these vulnerabilities. Canada's move is a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the world is changing, alliances are shifting, and America's security can no longer be taken for granted. As new powers rise and old alliances are tested, the very fabric of North American defense is being rewoven before our eyes. Tonight, we break down what this means for your safety, the economy, and America's place in a suddenly more dangerous world. How will Washington respond? What steps must be taken to restore trust and security? Stay with us as we uncover the implications of this northern shockwave and what it means for every American family. To truly grasp the shock of today's events, it's essential to look back at the unique relationship between the United States and Canada, a relationship defined by the world's longest undefended border. This border, stretching over 5,500 miles, is more than just a line on a map. It's a symbol of trust, cooperation, and shared values that have endured for generations. For most people living along this border, it's a part of daily life. Families, businesses, and communities have grown together, often blurring the lines between the two nations. This partnership has lasted for over 2 centuries, weathering storms and celebrating triumphs together. From the earliest days, leaders on both sides recognized the importance of friendship and mutual respect, setting a tone that would shape North America's destiny. After the War of 1812, both nations made a conscious choice to pursue peace, not conflict. They signed treaties, resolved disputes diplomatically, and forged a bond that became the bedrock of North American stability. This decision to prioritize peace over rivalry allowed both countries to flourish side by side. Canadians and Americans stood shoulder to shoulder in 2 world wars, fighting for freedom and democracy. Their sacrifices on distant battlefields forged a sense of brotherhood and trust that extended far beyond military alliances. During the Cold War, this partnership deepened further. Together, they created NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, the most integrated military alliance on the continent. This joint command meant that both nations literally trusted each other with their national security, working side by side to protect the skies above North America. This deep trust enabled open borders, allowing people and goods to flow freely. Trade boomed, making the US and Canada each other's largest trading partners. Millions of jobs and livelihoods depend on this cross-border relationship, and for decades it seemed unbreakable. But in recent decades, this friendship has faced new challenges. The tragic events of 9/11 led to tighter security and a thickening of the border, making travel and trade more difficult. Trade disputes have erupted, sometimes threatening the economic ties that bind the two nations. Policy disagreements on everything from trade to climate change have widened the gap between Washington and Ottawa. The easy camaraderie of the past has given way to more frequent tensions and misunderstandings. Many Canadians now feel overlooked, sensing that Washington takes the alliance for granted. There's a growing feeling that Canada's voice isn't being heard and that its concerns are too often dismissed by its powerful neighbor. Today's report is the culmination of years of quiet frustration. Canada is no longer content to be the silent partner. It is demanding to be heard, to have its interests respected, and to remind the world of the value of this historic alliance. Now, the alliance faces its toughest test yet. The choices made in the coming days will determine whether this history of trust can endure, or if a new chapter of uncertainty is about to begin. At the heart of this crisis is NORAD, the joint US-Canada command guarding North American skies. Once a Cold War marvel, NORAD's radar network is now decades old, built for Soviet bombers, not today's hypersonic missiles or drone swarms. Canada's report warns these outdated systems leave both nations exposed to new, faster threats from Russia and China. Ottawa has pushed for urgent upgrades, but Washington's response has lagged. The cost to modernize is massive, but the price of inaction could be catastrophic. Canada's public warning is clear. The shield is rusting, and the time for quiet diplomacy is over. The continent's security hangs in the balance. The Arctic, once a frozen barrier, is now a strategic battleground. Melting ice is opening new shipping lanes and access to vital resources, drawing Russia and China into the region. Russia is rebuilding military bases. China is investing in Arctic infrastructure. Canada sees these moves as existential threats, but accuses the US of neglecting the region in favor of other global priorities. Disputes over Arctic sovereignty, especially the Northwest Passage, are intensifying. Canada fears its vast, sparsely populated north could become a backdoor for aggression. Ottawa feels alone on the front line, while Washington's attention is elsewhere. The alliance is fraying where it matters most. The Sovereign Shield report pulls no punches. It warns that a hypersonic missile from the Arctic could hit the US heartland in under 15 minutes, undetected by current systems. Canada documents years of stalled talks and unmet US commitments to modernize NORAD. The report's message: Canada is ready to act, with or without American partnership. Ottawa is exploring independent surveillance and closer ties with other Arctic and NATO allies. This is a declaration of strategic independence born of frustration. Canada invites the US to join, but will no longer wait. The era of quiet reliance is over. Washington was blindsided. The White House issued a cautious statement, but behind the scenes, officials expressed shock and frustration at Canada's public move. Pentagon insiders admit the technical problems are real, but say airing them so openly is unprecedented. On Capitol Hill, the report sparked partisan finger-pointing instead of unity. Some call it a negotiating ploy, others see a failure of leadership. The real danger: political infighting could stall urgent action, just as adversaries look to exploit the rift. Canada's warning has exposed not just defense gaps, but deep divisions in Washington. The question: will leaders rise to the challenge, or let politics get in the way? The world is watching and reacting. America's allies are rattled. If the US can't keep Canada close, what does that mean for others? Russia and China are seizing the moment, using the rift to question US reliability. State media in Moscow and Beijing call it proof of Western decline. Markets are jittery. The US-Canada trade relationship is built on trust, now shaken. Families and businesses on both sides of the border feel the uncertainty. The image of a secure, united North America is suddenly in doubt. This is more than a defense issue. It's a test of identity and resolve. Experts are quick to point out that Canada's recent move isn't about flexing military muscle or stoking tensions. Instead, they describe it as a calculated act of desperation, a final card played after years of feeling sidelined and unheard by its closest ally. For many in Ottawa, this is less about confrontation and more about finally being noticed after repeated warnings and quiet diplomacy failed to spark any real change. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a leading analyst on North American relations, frames the situation as a cry for help packaged as a political bombshell. She explains that Canada's bold step is designed to force Washington to pay attention, to recognize the urgency of the issues at stake. Reed argues that this is not just a headline-grabbing maneuver, but a genuine plea for partnership and respect on the world stage. Retired General David Maxwell, who spent decades working with NORAD, reveals that the Pentagon has long been aware of the vulnerabilities in North American defense. Yet, he says, year after year, budget constraints and shifting priorities meant that critical upgrades were postponed. It's not a secret, Maxwell notes, but until now it was never urgent enough to act. Economist Dr. Mark Jennings warns that the fallout from this dispute could ripple far beyond military circles. He points to the world's most integrated supply chain, spanning everything from auto parts to agricultural goods, and cautions that any disruption could threaten thousands of jobs, slow economic growth, and undermine the prosperity both countries have built together over decades. Political analyst Dr. Jean-Pierre Lavoie sees this as a defining moment for Canada, a coming of age on the global stage. For years, Canada has played the role of loyal partner, often following America's lead, Lavoie says. But now, we're seeing a country ready to assert its own interests, to lead on its own security, and to demand a seat at the table. The consensus among experts is clear. This is a turning point in the relationship between the two nations. The old rules no longer apply, and both sides must adapt to a new reality where Canada's voice can no longer be ignored. Canada is stepping out of America's shadow, determined to chart its own course. Now the United States faces a critical decision, whether to embrace this new dynamic as partners or risk drifting further apart at a time when unity is needed most. The risks of inaction are real and growing. From border security to economic stability, the consequences of ignoring these warning signs could be severe, not just for Canada, but for the entire continent. The future of the alliance hangs in the balance. What happens next will shape not only the security of North America, but the very nature of the partnership between these two nations for years to come. America faces a choice: dismiss Canada's warning and deepen the rift, or listen, act, and rebuild trust. The first path means more division, emboldened adversaries, and a vulnerable continent. The second demands humility, partnership, and urgent investment in shared defense. This is a moment for leadership, not blame. Your safety is at stake. Demand action from those in power. The alliance can be renewed, but only if both nations rise to the challenge. The world is watching. Good night.